am the nature hacker, and this is your world. So today I want to talk about the death of Kurt Cobain. Was it a murder or was it a suicide? And if it was a murder, who did it? Who done it? Now, I do want to say that I hate researching murders. I was never into the whole detective, books where you try to figure out, or Clue, the board game, where you try to figure out who was the killer. That's not my thing, That's not what I like to think about. That's really not what I'm good at thinking about. But where are all of those people that love Clue, that love these murder mystery books? Are you just lost in fantasy, or are you going to join the real world and actually try to figure out some of these real life mysteries? Because I can promise you that this mystery is more intriguing, is more exciting than any fiction you could read. And if you figure this out, there's actually real world benefits to that. You can actually help humanity if you figure this type of thing out, okay? So I only do this out of necessity because you are on your duff reading fantasy books instead of in the real world. Okay, so get out there, get involved, get in the animating contest of liberty, the real life stuff, or else I'll promise you that you are going to be disappointed in yourself on your deathbed. So I hope that really, hits home for you, because look, I don't want to be doing this stuff. I'm an inventor, I'm a doctor. I come up with cures for diseases and, new technology, like space age technology, okay? I don't want to have to be tied down figuring out all these murder mysteries, real life murder mysteries, because you people who should be figuring it out are too scared to do it, or you're too lazy, or whatever. Just you people who are supposed to be solving these murder mysteries, get off your butt and do something, okay? So all of that said, I'd been thinking about Kurt Cobain mystery because I saw somebody talk about it in one of their YouTube videos, and I watched a little too much YouTube probably. But yeah, I'm constantly watching YouTube. But and then the next morning I had a dream that I was basically in the life of Kurt Cobain, and what's crazy is what I experienced in that dream actually lines up with people close to Kurt, talking about what his life was actually like, and just to go into some just basic premise of the dream. It was basically that I was with a girl, and she was like sleeping around with other guys, and she was like, this very prominent person, and, I was like a pretty prominent person too, and, so she was sleeping around with these guys, and I knew, that she was cheating on me, so, like, to get back at her, I don't know why I didn't leave her. I mean, in my real life, I would have left her, obviously, but to get back at her, I slept with, like, younger girls, I don't know, 18 years old or whatever, and I did kind of like it, in the dream. And so it was like that. It was this weird relationship where, we had an official relationship, but then unofficially, she was sleeping with other guys and I was sleeping with other girls. And part of the reason I was able to sleep with those other younger girls was because of my, I don't know if she was my wife in the dream or girlfriend or whatever, but because of her, these younger girls wanted to be with me, because she was my girlfriend or wife or whatever. these young girls wanted to be with me. So it's this kind of weird relationship where I got what I wanted kind of because I was letting her get what she wanted, and it was just a messed up life, you know, just a messed up life. And it turns out Kurt Cobain's relationship with Courtney Love was actually exactly like that in real life. So I didn't know that until after that dream. I didn't know. You know, before that dream, I had no idea. And, you know, looking at Smells Like Teen Spirit, also his song, looking at those lyrics, you could probably infer that as well, and even the music video as well. So, yeah, crazy stuff. So after that, I really wanted to look into, you know, the murder of Kurt Cobain. Not because I wanted to, because I needed to figure it out, you know, because it didn't seem like anyone really had figured it out. So anyway, I went on just this long goose chase, and what I'll do is in the description, it might take me, sometimes it takes me a little while to put in the description. So if you're like the first viewer or something, you might see this video without anything in the description, even though I talk about stuff in the description. But just know that if you wait 10, 20, 30 minutes, I'll have this stuff in the description for you. So yeah, I'm gonna leave a bunch of stuff in the description, and you know, please, if you're at all interested in murder mystery type stuff, please go through all of the links I leave, and I hope that it leads you on, you know, other journeys to find out more about this topic. But man, this is the hardest one I've ever done. You know, I did Scalia, did Prince. Those were pretty straightforward because we didn't have much evidence, but the evidence that we did have wasn't tampered with, wasn't messed with, you know, for the most part. You know, what we had, and it was just that. Now, in the Kurt Cobain case, there's so much evidence, and all of it, most of it's like false, you know. So it's the opposite problem. We have too much evidence instead of not enough evidence. So it makes my job harder because it's harder to parse between all of the potential possibilities. You know, this is definitely a Clue style murder on steroids. All right, so what I want to talk about is just a few pieces of evidence. You know, kind of those few pieces of clutch evidence, because everything else, all the other evidence, everything else is like lies. I can't trust anybody. The Tom Green or whatever, the private investigator, and check in the description, and I'll give you, you know, there will be links for Tom Green and all of the stuff that I talk about. But Tom Green, his info, I got the feeling, you know, 3/4 of the way through reading his sequence of events, that he was lying about some things, and you know, obviously Courtney Love was lying about a lot of things. You know, it's just like everybody involved was lying about everything, so it makes it really difficult. Now, there's one interesting thing. So, I mean, here are some potential theories, okay? One potential theory is that, and this might have to be a two-part video, we'll see how quick I can get through this, but one potential theory would be that obviously Kurt committed suicide, okay? And that's actually a really decent theory when you learn a good amount about suicide. So that's one theory. The other theory was that Courtney Love killed him, okay? Another theory could be that Courtney Love actually hired Tom Green to kill him, and that Tom Green's whole spiel is a cover-up for the fact that his fingerprints were found in the building, and he had to make up a story why his fingerprints were in the building. So that could be a whole nother theory, and that's a theory I hadn't heard before. So I'd say that's actually a really good theory. That's in the top 2 theories. Okay, and another theory could be that the record company killed him, okay? Because in 92, there's a 92 letter where Kirk basically threatens the record label, saying, if you don't take this article off of Vogue, I'm going to break up the band and you're not going to get any more money. So You know, that's obviously sounds like something that that would piss a record label off to kill somebody, you know, a lot like how a record label killed Prince. But, so that's another theory. Now, those are pretty much the theories that we have to work with. Those theories. And let's say that it would be, let's narrow that down to the Courtney Love, Tom Green murder theory, that Tom Green was a hired hitman by Courtney Love. Okay, so that's one theory. The other theory being the record label killed him, maybe in conjunction with Courtney and Tom Green. I think his name's Tom Green. So there's that. So there's record label. There's Courtney and, you know, Tom Green being involved or whatever, and there's suicide. So it's between those things. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of the evidence, like I just said. I mean, if you want all the evidence, look in the description. I'll have links to everything I can think of, right? But I'm going to talk about the little clutch key little pieces of evidence that made me narrow it down and also select one of these as what I think is the most probable thing. So, now, as soon as I came up with the theory about the record company, that was a big one, and I was ready to jump on that and just run with that, okay? But there's a suicide note, okay? There's Kurt Cobain's suicide note. So if the letter Kurt wrote to the record company was real, then his suicide note was real, because the handwriting is the same. So if Kurt wrote a letter threatening the record company, then his suicide note was real. So that means that it can't work. It doesn't work. That means that the record company couldn't have been involved, because if the record company was pissed at Kurt, then that means that Kurt's suicide note was real, and it means he actually committed suicide. So they couldn't have been directly involved. Like, they couldn't have murdered him. Maybe they induced him to commit suicide. That could be a possibility. But they couldn't have directly murdered him. Does that make sense? Because if it's true that Kurt pissed off the record company, then it's also true that Kurt wrote a suicide note. So it's like, you can't have both. You can't have the suicide note being real and the record company murdering him. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? So that counts the record company out of it. Now, that still means that Courtney Love could have done it. And Courtney had all of the motives in the world to do it, okay? Tom Green had all of the motives in the world to be involved too. They have only profited, Tom Green and Courtney Love have only profited off of his murder. So they had the motives going in, and looking backwards is 2020, right? And they also have gained everything from it. So there's a huge just ball of evidence right there that they would be involved, because, you know, all of the motive and all of the benefit has come to them, okay? So we're between Courtney Love and Tom Green murdering Kurt Cobain, with the help of Kurt Cobain's best friend, who you know, it'll be in the links of the junk in the description. But so there's that possibility. Tom Green, Courtney Love, and Kurt Cobain's best friend all working together to murder Kurt, or that Kurt committed suicide. So it's between those two possibilities, and I'm gonna cut the video off right now, and well, we'll see. I might have to cut the video right there, or I could maybe continue on. We're gonna see if I can upload it. But all right, so here's the deal. Now, how do we parse between those two possibilities? I mean, Kurt, you would think that if he was having trouble, if he was so also let me tell you about the suicide note. Now, I think the suicide note was tampered with, or I really do. I studied it. I studied Kurt's handwriting in the 92 letter. I studied the suicide note, and I think that Kurt wrote everything up to and including the line that said, Courtney and his daughter's name, I can't remember her name, I will be at your altar. Okay, I believe he wrote everything up to and including that line, based on analysis of the handwriting. Now, that part where it says, I'll be at your altar, that definitely makes me think it was a suicide note. And it makes me also think that Kurt kind of expected Courtney and his daughter to also be killed, or also to, commit suicide, basically, that Courtney would kill her daughter and kill herself. And that's what I think Kurt actually expected, was that. So I think that that's what actually happened, that Kurt, which it doesn't make sense, because why wouldn't Kurt just take his money and run, take his money, go off, basically gotten a divorce with Courtney, given her half of everything, and then just gone off into nowhere's land, and then just lived out his life, and or even faked his death. And that's another possibility, is that it is a possibility that he faked his death. But why not just do that? Why not just go off and live using the money you've made? He didn't like living with much. I believe he loved living in the greenhouse. He had his little shack too, but it seems like that was in disrepair, and he moved out of there, and his new place was the greenhouse above their house, which is where he was found dead. So, why not just move off into a foreign country and fade? That's the thing. He would fade out, right? He would fade out of fame doing that. So then, in his suicide note, he said it's better to burn out than fade away. So that actually kind of addresses my point there. Why not just go off and fade out? Well, he would rather burn out than fade out. Now, the other possibility could be why not fake your death? That's not a really good thing to do, but better than killing yourself, right? Maybe he had more integrity than that. He said that he talked a lot about morality in his letter, and he doesn't want to just play the fool, and he said it wasn't him pretending wouldn't be it wouldn't be fair to his fans or to himself, so for him to pretend that he's dead, it wouldn't be fair to anybody, so actually he had a moral reason, a moral justification for actually killing himself, which is really interesting. That definitely is a philosophical question. Would it be more in any, obviously, knowing what I know, no, it's not a good option ever to kill yourself, all right? There's always another option, but he felt like there wasn't, okay? He felt like there wasn't. Faking his death would be, dishonest to himself and to his fans, and fading away, moving off somewhere and, living a quiet life somewhere, fading away also wasn't an option, because he didn't want that to be his legacy. So, so it does kind of make sense why he would kill himself. So, and taking into account that he did in fact write that final line, not the final line, but he wrote the final line saying that Courtney and his daughter, he'll be at their altar, that does signify suicide, because what that means is that when they die, Kurt Cobain will be there for them. I don't know, like greeting them into the afterlife, or, that's kind of the thought that comes when you say, I'll be at your altar. That means that I'll be waiting for you in heaven or wherever, okay? So, yeah. So all of that evidence lines up that this was a suicide, right? Now, what about that final part of the letter where it says, Courtney, keep going for our daughter, and I love you, blah, blah, blah. I think that was fake because, why? Because a single Y. The Y at the end of the word Courtney did not line up with Kurt's handwriting. That is not how he writes Y's, okay? He might write Y's like that rarely at the beginning of a word, like you or your or something like that, but never, 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 never does he write Y's like that at the end of a word, like Courtney, for example. So, to me, that is proof to me that he did not write that last part. Now, that means that Courtney did write that last part, So you would think that why would Courtney edit the note unless she was involved in his murder and she wanted to make the murder sound like a suicide, right? You would make the note sound like a suicide note. Let's say that Kurt wrote that note and it was just that, oh, I'm not going to go on the tour, right? Because Kurt was slated to go on a tour and he didn't want to do it. So let's say that note was just that Kurt's telling people that he's not going on the tour, right? And that had nothing to do with suicide. Then Courtney makes the note about suicide at the end to fool people thinking he committed suicide when he really was murdered by Courtney or her accomplices or whatever. Well, I think there could be another reason she modified the note, and that reason would be that she didn't want their daughter growing up with this like loose end of Kurt just killing himself and that's it. She wanted her daughter to grow up, knowing that her father wanted her to stay alive. Her father wanted her to continue on without him, that their life would be better without him, to keep going, keep living, So I think that Courtney modified that because she felt that letter would be devastating as their daughter grew up, if she didn't feel like her dad wanted her to continue on, And I really think that Kurt didn't really want them to continue on. I really, Courtney said they had a suicide pact and stuff. I think Kurt expected Courtney after that, for Courtney to kill her daughter and to kill herself. That's what I think, okay? That's what I think Kurt expected to happen. So Courtney writing that stuff at the end was kind of Courtney countering against that expectation, okay? Countering against for her own mental health sake and for her daughter's mental health sake. Countering that, suicide domino effect, So anyway, there's that. Now, see, that's what makes this murder mystery so difficult, is because there's so many lies involved, okay? So we have a pretty good foot to stand on now, saying that Kurt Cobain actually did commit suicide. And the cherry on top, the thing that seals the deal to me, was in 2014, I guess it was Washington or Oregon State Police, something like that. It should be Washington, because I think Kurt, he was a Washington resident. But anyway, so the Washington police released 35 photos from the death scene, right? And I looked through those photos, and for a while, and I really, the first thing I thought was, man, that gun is too long to kill yourself with. I mean, how could you put it in your mouth and pull the trigger when that gun is so long? How could that be possible? And I think it's just barely possible. I measured with my fingers the length of the gun and the length of the dude's arms that's holding it and yada yada, and I think Kurt could have barely put the gun in his mouth and then reached down and pulled the trigger, So I think it's just barely possible that he could do that. But that was the first thought I had, is, it can't be a suicide because that barrel's too long. So, but I think it is actually possible. So then, looking more, it's like, well, I don't know. What about the his little pile of stuff, and it just doesn't look like he was in that room for a long period of time. He only had one cigarette butt there, and I looked at more pictures, and there might have been other cigarette butts. I'm like, just doesn't really seem like a suicide. It kind of seems like, but then it's like, well, what are the other options? The other options would be that he was drug up there, and so this is in the greenhouse. This is like a part above the house, so it's like, okay, well, if he was murdered, how would they have gotten him in the greenhouse? Or, well, maybe he was in the greenhouse and they broke in, right, and then killed him. But if he was in the greenhouse and they broke in and killed him, wouldn't he have more stuff than just a few little items there? I mean, wouldn't he, like, if he was living in the greenhouse, he should have had more junk around in there, where there's, like, practically nothing. So it's like, that doesn't make sense either, that they murdered him. Because, let's say they came in there, that wouldn't really make sense. Well, maybe what would happen is his best friend got him to do heroin, pass out, right? And then they come in there and shoot him, right? But that also does not make sense, because if you look at the spoon, I don't know how many of you know how heroin is done, but there's a spoon there, and in the spoon, there's another hit of heroin sitting there, undone. Okay, so what I'm assuming you do, based on my knowledge of chemistry and biology and stuff, is that you put a little piece of, he was using, it looked like black tar heroin, which is this black tar. You put it in the spoon, you take a lighter, heat the spoon up so it melts that black tar, and I don't know, maybe you mix some water in it, or you spit in it or something to dilute it a little bit, and then you suck that now liquid into your syringe, and then you shoot it into your vein. So if Kurt had taken drugs, passed out, and they come and killed him, what you would see is the spoon would have maybe some residue of melted heroin in it, and that would be that. The spoon would be on the ground because it was hot. The spoon's hot. You put it on the ground. You wouldn't put it back in your box because it would burn the box. You put it on the ground, and you lay back and maybe pass out. I don't know how heroin really affects you, but I would assume you pass out. Maybe not. I don't know. But I would think that you would find some residue in the spoon, and that it would look like you just took a hit out of there, and that's it. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what you would expect if he passed out and they came in and killed him. That's what you would expect to see. But it doesn't look like he passed out and they came in and killed him. So the other option would be he took a hit of heroin, he didn't pass out, and then they came in and maybe there was a struggle. But see, then they killed him in his mouth, so it's like you wouldn't be able to kill somebody in their mouth if they were not passed out. So it doesn't really make sense. I mean, the other option could have been that he was with roofied. He passed out from roofies. They killed him, and then they planted the heroin there. But see, then the police department said that he had a lot of heroin in his system, and they didn't say anything about roofies. So they said he had a trace of Valium, which is not enough to be passed out on. So there was heroin in his system. So if he was passed out, it was from heroin. But he couldn't have been passed out from heroin because the way that the spoon had the next hit of heroin ready for him, okay? And you could tell that he was doing multiple hits of heroin. He did a hit of heroin, he came down in the greenhouse, okay? He did 3 hits. Well, he did at least 2 hits of heroin. And how do I know that? Because the ground had burn spots, okay? There was burn spots from where the hot spoon laid on the ground. And in the picture in one of the links I give you, you'll be able to see those burn spots on the ground. So he did 2 hits of heroin, and then he killed himself, is what it seems like. So none of the theories line up. There's no possible way he was murdered. There's no possible way he's murdered. And, you know, rewind the video if you want, a few minutes or whatever. I just laid out how there's any possible way you can think he was murdered doesn't line up with the evidence, okay? So here's another thing is that Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails in one of their songs, I think it was like Mare. I'll also link to this. It was like La Mer or something like that. Trent said that he bought a beach house to kill himself in, okay, which he obviously didn't end up doing, but it's the mindset of man, you know, they want to kill themselves in a nice place, okay? Maybe Kurt built this greenhouse to kill himself in, okay? That could definitely be. And then he gets out of rehab. He goes to his happy place, the greenhouse. You know, he's probably very, you know, what do you call it? In withdrawal, right? In serious withdrawal. He goes in there with his shotgun, right? He does a hit of heroin. He comes down. He does another hit of heroin. And it's just like, he just doesn't want to go on like this, you know, because now he's seen the withdrawal, and now he knows how impossible it will ever be for him to quit because of how powerful the withdrawals were or whatever, and he just wants to get out, you know. So, when he's in his happy place in the greenhouse, you know, you could see how he might want to kill himself from, you know, that psychology, you know, like the Trent Reznor psychology there. So, that's where I'm coming from. That's what I think. I do think he actually killed himself. And look, you know, if you think I'm a shill for saying that, screw you. Because look at all my other videos. I never pull any punches. And the last thing I would do is pull a punch on this. So I really do believe the evidence really strongly points to Kurt Cobain killing himself. Yes, Courtney Love is a terrible person. Yes, Tom Green is probably lying about a lot of things. All of the motives were there for them to kill him. All of the benefits came after he was dead. You know, there's so much on that circumstantial type evidence, but you know, when the rubber hits the road, you know, it couldn't happen. There was no possible way for them to murder him. So it really strongly points to suicide. And I hate saying that because that's the mainstream. That's what the mainstream believes. That's what the police department said and everything. But you know what? The clock is right twice a day, you know. So, you know, they could be right once in a great while. So anyway, thanks for watching. Remember to check the description. And hey, you people who love murder mysteries, get involved with this type of crap, okay? Because you're forcing me to do this when I should be inventing things that change the world and, you know, curing diseases and stuff, alright? So you're making me do this. So live your destiny. This is your destiny to solve these murder mysteries. So get involved. And I'll subscribe to your channel and I'll promote you. Thanks for watching. I am the Nature Hacker. Do work.